This is walking through Mark 16. The place where we will resume our reading is Mark chapter 9, verse 14. Welcome back. If you have watched these before, or welcome for the first time if you just now are tuning in or watching one of these episodes. I know I have spread the word around here the last few days about our YouTube channel, so there might be some of you that are new, and so let me take just a brief moment to say some things I said in earlier episodes for the sake of those who may just be tuning in for the first time. This is a brief walk through the book of Mark. It's not intended to be analyzing the text closely, looking at every verse or every section of the book of Mark in great detail. It is being swiftly walked through, and that's why I call it Walk Through Mark, and just reading sections and making brief observations or commentary and then moving on. Also, another thing I have emphasized before is how much Mark stresses the activities of Jesus or works. It's not that he doesn't spend any space in his record or gospel account talking about things Jesus taught, but less so, it would seem, than the other three gospel records. He shows Jesus to be and likes to present him as a man involved in various activities. And of course, one of the things, now this is me just giving my thought about that, one of the things I take away from that is just how much good is done for me and my faith just by observing Jesus. Not solely what he said, but also what he did. And in fact, I think I have an entire series of sermons, I believe, called What Would Jesus Do? Or something like that. I don't recall the exact title. And there's just so much to learn by way of example. And we call him that. We call Jesus the great example, rightly so. And so anyway, in the book of Mark, not that you can't do it in the other gospel accounts, but in Mark, you really get a heavy record of the things that Jesus did. Okay, let's read. This is Mark 9, verse 14. And when he came to the disciples, he saw a great multitude around them, and scribes disputing with them. Immediately when they saw him, all the people were greatly amazed, and running to him, greeted him. And he asked the scribes, "What are you discussing with them?" Then one of the crowd answered and said, "Teacher, I brought you my son, who has a mute spirit, and wherever it seizes him, it throws him down. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. So I spoke to your disciples that they should cast it out, but they could not." He answered him and said, "O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? Bring him to me." Then they brought him to him, and when he saw him, immediately the spirit convulsed him, and he fell on the ground and wallowed, foaming at the mouth. So he asked his father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And he said, "From childhood. And often he has thrown him both into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." Jesus said to him, "If you can believe, all things are possible to him who believes." Immediately the father of the child cried out and said with tears, "Lord, I believe, help my unbelief." When Jesus saw that the people came running together, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "Deaf and dumb spirit, I command you, come out of him and enter him no more." Then the spirit cried out, convulsed him greatly, and came out of him. And he became as one dead, so that many said, "He's dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. And when he had come into the house, his disciples asked him privately, "Why could we not cast it out?" So he said to them, "This kind can come out by nothing but prayer and fasting." Well, there's a lot there. I sometimes think that, and this is afterwards in hindsight, I'll think, well, I should have commented on that, or I should have commented on that, and I didn't. But I'll stick to my I'll stick to my approach, and that is that it's just whatever strikes me at the moment worthy of, not worthy, that's the wrong word, strikes me something I wish to talk about or comment on, and not try to dissect the verses and the reading in every single detail. So let me see if I can draw out two or three, and then we'll move on. On this occasion, and I'll pass on the discussion about what the scribes and everyone were disputing about. I'll pass on that part and just go straight to this exorcism of an unclean spirit, a demon in a young person, and make a couple comments about that. There was a man who had a youngster. I think it says, the teacher, I brought you my son. Yes, I brought to your disciples. And I'll stop myself and say, if you recall from previous readings, they had been given power to do this. So that's natural, you might say, that they would approach them about it. They had that power to do that. And Jesus indicates to him how long this has been going on, and it's been going on since childhood, and the demon and unclean spirits just, they just rack him with so much pain and agony and seizures and that kind of thing. And he describes it there fairly well. One of the things that I'll mention first off is this. This gives us a glimpse into how the spirit world of Satan, of the unclean spirit world, of demons and that kind of thing, or person, beings, how they affect people. Now, I'm not saying that I know for a fact that a demon could not inhabit someone and it not do this. I don't know if that was always the case without exception, but I know it's true here. We've seen it before. We read about, someone before that had it, and it was causing such misery in their life. And one thing that I get a glimpse of about this is an insight into the mind, if you will, or the operation of the devil. This is what he does. This is what he does to people. This is what he does to children. Now, I don't know how young, but it says since childhood has been going on. So I don't know if the son now is 20 years old and it's been since he was, 15 or whatever. I don't know the age, but it's been since childhood that this has been going on. And he indicates there that this is, this is just terrible, what the unclean spirit, and the person doesn't have any control over it. It's not like, well, you shouldn't let the demon do that to you. There's no control over it. And, oh my, who wants to have anything to do with Satan, seeing this is his modus operandi? This is his method of operation. I tell you, we as human beings should have a very soft, and we do, soft spot for children, little children, or since childhood, it says. And to see this kind of treatment, talk about abuse, talk about child abuse. Oh, it's awful. Next thing, and once again, this is going to be a bit of a repeat for you that have listened to all the previous episodes. You'll recognize what I'm saying as already having been said, and that is that the demons have personality, and not just personality; they are persons. In this case, it's interesting. Mark indicates just when they saw Jesus coming. These are not just evil forces within a person. We all have sinfulness in our lives, and you might say evil is within me. That's not what we're talking about here. That may be true. I'm not denying that, but that's not here. This is here talking about a being, if you will, or a demon, an unclean spirit within a person who, let me see if I can check it again or find the exact wordage. They brought him to him, and when he saw him, that's verse 20. When he saw him, immediately the spirit convulsed him. They have not only the ability to talk, we've noticed that before, but they're here as seen as being able to see through the person they're inhabiting at the time, and they throw him into convulsions and the like. I missed a point earlier, verse 19, so let me go back and get that one, and I promise you I won't deal with every single verse, but let me not miss that one. Jesus here indicates in response to this situation, and let me just read it exactly. O faithless generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? bring him to me. I have often said that Jesus enduring grief was not just something that started at the cross. It was not enduring the pain and that cup of suffering that he talks about in the Garden of Gethsemane and, of course, on the cross and all that led up to that. He had to endure such grief from his own disciples, from the people round about, in his community or circle, or the multitudes that flocked after him and so forth. It's amazing. And I've often used this verse. I started to say this, and I sort of forgotten my point, and that is, how long did he bear with these folks? It was longer than when he said it. He said, "How long shall I bear with you? Bring him to me." And there's a lesson there. I mentioned a moment ago, you'll recall, I said there's lessons of observation. Example, here's one. You and me, we will often be pressed, and it's hard for us to endure nonsense, wrongdoing, fickleness, whatever, all kinds of things. I'm just listing two or three that come to mind. And it's hard to be long suffering, but we're taught by not only word, but deed of Jesus, by example, you need to keep on. When it's hard, when it's like, oh, I can't go on any longer with this, go longer. Push it past when you have those feelings. Okay, and one more. I promise. I should probably stop promising. I promise. I think I'll stop after this one. Okay, no. Two more. First of all, the man says, the father says, "Lord, if you can do anything for us, please do." And the Lord responds, "If you believe, the Lord was not just going around every day healing people, casting out demons just because he felt compassionate, which he did. He felt compassionate, but that was not the only motive for him doing. And we talked about that in earlier lessons, and I'll reference that so you can go back and hear those if you're interested. But he indicates, I'm needing to see some faith here. Can you, don't say if I can do anything. Do you have faith that I can and that I will? And here is the great line. I love this. Verse 24. Immediately the father of the child cried out and said with tears, "Lord, I believe, help my unbelief." He cried out with crying, with tears. "Lord, I believe, help my unbelief." I remember many, many years ago being first struck by this so emotionally, so powerfully, when hearing Brother Ray Votaw in South Africa, American gospel preacher, but spent many years overseas in South Africa in particular, and had a big impact on me in my early 20s when I was just beginning to preach full time. And he, in a lesson, and I forget what the lesson was about, but in a sermon, he made reference to this. And I remember Brother Ray saying something like, in his own way of wording it, "Lord, I'd be lying to say that I don't have any faith at all. I do believe, but I need a whole lot more of right where that came from." And that's so true. Always. Lord, I believe, but I need a whole lot more of right where that came from. I can't help but think Jesus was very touched by that. It doesn't say that. It says that when he saw the people running together, he quickly rebuked the spirit and told him to come out and don't you dare go back into him again. And he did. He did. Well, as you can tell, that's quite a touching story, isn't it? It continues to always be a very touching story, and that last part in particular. Thank you for listening.